You won't be shocked to learn that K-State lost on Saturday in Allen Fieldhouse. You might be a little surprised to see that it was only by the final score of 84-74. K-State falls by 10. They ended up actually at the under 4 timeout having this, was it a 5-point game even, at least 6-point game, and K-State did all that after trailing by a margin that's just really tough to come back from in this building. They were down 14-0 to start the game, spotted KU some points. You immediately think, didn't think this could get worse. It got worse all of a sudden, but K-State continued to fight, and honestly, you think about everything that was put into this game today. Certainly some guys had games that you wish would have been better. David Gasson would be one of those that you think back, you probably didn't get as much out of him as you normally would expect, but the pieces seemed to flow and work a little bit better, and trust me, there were still those moments where you go, what is going on here with the offense, the defense? I mean, Max Jones had some moments where the feet looked like they were stuck in mud. But one of the things that kind of turned the game around was minutes for David Castillo and Ugonna Onyenso. And David Castillo ended up playing a good chunk of minutes throughout the rest of the game, knocked down a couple of big threes late to kind of keep this thing floating in the realm of possibility for K-State. But that 14-0 start to the game didn't mean much, especially as Coleman Hawkins had a really, really solid day. K-State was low on turnovers. Hawkins was really good, double-double for him. And that's, not even considering the fact that assist-wise he was good as well. So a lot that K-State did well in this game, but they shot the ball poorly, and really a lot of the same problems that have plagued them in most games this season were the reasons why they lost today. And it again shows, like we've seen in a lot of games, TCU, K-State could have easily won the game. Texas Tech earlier this week, K-State could have easily won that game. They just didn't because they don't do these little things or some of the bigger things, at least a little bit more of the time, correctly. So it just really encapsulates the season as K-State misses an opportunity here in Allen where obviously you don't get many of them, and this is a vulnerable KU team compared to ones in past years, but K-State couldn't get it done today, and those first 4 minutes really tell the story of the game.
Yeah, it really was kind of just over at the 16-minute mark in the first half, and you don't really say that too often, but it was 14-0. K-State had nothing going on. The one mistake that I think was really made coaching-wise in that first 4 minutes is if you're calling a timeout 2 minutes in, you should probably get new bodies on the floor, because if you're calling a timeout, from what Jerome Tank said, was just kind of get acclimated, why not get more guys out there and get them acclimated as well? But it was a game the rest of the way, and I think that is what is the most frustrating part of this game, is that this is kind of not exactly the typical Allen Fieldhouse game, but the game where you always see where K-State gets down early, kind of plays even to maybe even winning the rest of the way after getting down so far early on. And I think that that's what's kind of frustrating. And what's really frustrating is that this again still isn't even like a springboard towards anything. Yeah. Because when you're going all in to make the NCAA tournament this season and then make a run, you can't use this as like a springboard, because you had 4 guys play tonight that are hopefully going to be something down the line for K-State. And one of those is a freshman, so you're kind of excited about that. But then the other guys are juniors, and it's like, okay, how much more improvement can you get from Brendan Hazen, Ugonna Onyenso? Can you reel Doug McDaniel in and keep him engaged and keep him as somebody that you could have next season? So there's nothing really to build off of, and that's what I think makes this season and this game frustrating, because this is the best that K-State's played, I think, probably since the Cincinnati game, and they still fall short and lose by 10 points, but you don't feel like you're really building towards anything.
Yeah, and that is probably the thing that makes this season all that much tougher, is you look at it and you go, well, this doesn't mean anything, and like even wins right now don't really mean a lot for K-State moving forward. I think the things that you look at positively are what David Castillo did today, and how Kelsey Robinette pointed out afterwards, like plus minus wise, like him being on the floor seems to have a positive impact at times, and you just have to kind of go all out with how much time you're going to give him to. You talk about getting acclimate a freshman guard and give him more time on the floor, because the wins and the losses, they don't really matter at this point for K-State. It's about which guys are going to be back next year, and will you have them ready to where David Castillo is more of a night in, night out basis type of guy, as opposed to just kind of playing to play, see what happens. So I think that's a positive. I also, after the game, asked Coleman Hawkins about, thinking of the decision he made, where spends 4 years at Illinois, and then this year comes to K-State, and now another loss. Where does this season go for him? Like, what does he have left to do this season? And he answered it in a really mature way, a way that showed that I think he still obviously cares about this team. He hasn't quit on them, when for a guy like that it would be very easy to do so. And I think that's the kind of player that is good to still be around this team. And I don't know how many guys are like Coleman Hawkins, where there is a positive influence to look at for younger guys like David Castillo or whoever else, and see, okay, I need to carry myself like Coleman Hawkins. Obviously, Coleman Hawkins is a talented basketball player. He had a solid night today with his, double-double and everything else that came with it. But how he's been able to handle himself, I think, with this team is something that's positive moving forward, and we'll see which guys grab onto it and use it to their advantage. And I definitely could see a scenario where, again, retention is a big part of this, but if David Castillo is still in a K-State uniform 3 years from now, where he could be talking about a guy like Coleman Hawkins being somebody that kind of helped show him how to get this done. And I think it's positive for K-State fans to at least realize that Coleman Hawkins has not quit on this team when it would be easy for him. I think you can question some of the other players and the effort and some of the other stuff, but I think that guy is still at least trying to lead this team and set the foundation for whoever is back next year, that they are going to try and be better and get this thing improved. And I don't think you have to worry about him kind of corrupting how things go.
Yeah, it's time again for everybody's favorite game of kids cover your ears, because Coleman Hawkins takes a lot of shit for the NIL money that he supposedly got from K-State, but he is far from the worst problem and the biggest problem on K-State. K-State needs more guys like Coleman Hawkins, not just on the court, but I think off the court as well, and how he's really handled himself. I mean, after today's game, it's probably easy for him to be somebody that's just kind of checked out, but he was, I think, as mad as we've seen him after a game, and is really fired up. And I think that he really doesn't like these guys either, that at KU. So seeing that fire and saying that, yeah, K-State should have won this game, and we get them again in Manhattan. So I think that that's something positive to kind of go forward next season, or for this season, and to kind of have that leadership for next season, because he can rub off on some of these guys that you want back.
Yeah, and I think you look at how things played out today. Coleman Hawkins, I understand why he would say, and I think we should have won. I don't know that I would go that far, but you had the opportunity there, certainly. Then it come through, didn't work out, and there's disappointment, and should be, that Coleman Hawkins wasn't brought in to continue to be the exact same player he was at Illinois. Now, you could say it's on the coaching staff and idiots like myself who really thought that the Coleman Hawkins addition was a big deal to think that he could do something. But you bring a guy like that in and think, hey, we're going to give you a bigger role, so things are going to be a little bit like you're going to get a little bit better. You're going to find a way to contribute in ways different than what you have in the past. It just hasn't happened this year, but he's still been a really good player. And again, that mindset is an important thing. I think certainly there were different things that Coleman Hawkins didn't handle perfectly. I think that there are some things that kind of embodied what the issues that surround this team overall have been at points throughout the season. But for what he means to his teammates and inside the locker room, I wouldn't have any concerns about him, and you at least want a guy like that can lead moving forward. I think David Gasson is a good guy for those guys to look at too. So for anybody that's back next year, I think that the remnants of what this team is aren't going to wash off on them in a bad way, mainly because I think if there are any guys that are like that, they won't be on this team next year. So, I mean, once again, we saw some guys not get minutes today that people are probably wondering why they didn't play. I would imagine it has something to do with the fact that they just didn't seem to be deserving of the minutes today. Now, in terms of minutes and what's deserved, one of the other questionable parts of this game could be the fact that, like you said, the starting five struggled. First 2 minutes, it's bad, it's ugly, timeout. Nobody changes. Nobody comes off the floor. I thought effort on defense was pretty bad early on by Doug McDaniel. Max Jones struggled on defense. I don't know if it was necessarily an effort thing, but he got lost quite a bit. And so K-State didn't make a change there. And then they come out to start the second half, and they go to the same starting five that started the game down 14-0 after, the group that was on the floor at the end of the first half made a nice little push, made this an interesting game. And that included Ugonna Enyenso and David Castillo. And similar to kind of what I wondered after the Wichita State game, I wondered why we didn't see that same crew go back out on the floor. And what do you know, as the game progressed along, that was the group that had to be on the floor once again. So it's just, I think it's been that kind of season for K-State. And moving forward, you're going to have a tough time, I think, getting anything corrected in some massive way, just because this team is what it is at this point. And I think Jerome Tang even kind of, not directly admitted it, but made it clear how much of a struggle it is when. And again, it's not like he was trying to say it's not his fault. He obviously, I think, realizes that it's his fault the way this roster is. But it's tough with how fast recruiting the portal goes. Like, it can be tough to get guys to build a team like this quickly. And I think he's learning some lessons in it on how he needs to build a team. And also, they're going to have to try, even with an expedited timeline with the way that the portal works, try to be a little bit more thorough in how they decide who's going to be a member of this team. And that'll be fascinating moving forward for K-State. But he kind of addressed it head on, and I do think we're starting to see at least a little bit more of an understanding of, here are our problems, here are how we have to try and get better. And I know nobody likes that answer because, people are not happy with the way this season has gone. I don't know anybody that is, and nobody should be. But as many have pointed out, K-State is not going to fire Jerome Tang after this season. And even up until after last season, I still thought Jerome Tang did more good as a coach at K-State than bad. I thought, last year was unfortunate in the way some things turned out. Some of it, again, on Jerome Tang. You kind of create your own good and bad luck at times, and they certainly did that. But I thought there was some good. This year just completely bottomed out on them. But now I do think we are starting to see some steps being taken to rectify those problems, and only time will tell if it ends up being to K-State's benefit moving forward next year and whatever comes after that for the Jerome Tang era, on if it mattered and it fixed things, or if what's happening this season is going to become the regular. And if that's the case, then it won't last many seasons. But with the way things work in college basketball and how K-State worked to get Jerome Tang to stay, you might have to put up with it for a little bit. But I think trying to come out of this with a positive attitude would do K-State fans some good today. And I know that sounds hilarious coming from me, but I don't know if it's a realization that I've had or just the way that I feel about how some things are starting to look and turn around a little bit. But I actually feel better about K-State moving forward after today than I have probably since the season started, when I thought this team was going to be a top 4 team in the Big 12 and easily inside the NCAA tournament.
I'll say something that probably won't make a lot of people happy, because it's like I said that this season is just kind of a wash. But if you play how they did today, K-State's going to beat somebody that they probably shouldn't have any business beating, and it'll probably come in Manhattan. I talked with KSC_fan actually during the Texas Tech game, saying that this team is probably going to get like one of Arizona or KU or Iowa State at home, and especially if they play like how they did today. They're going to get one of those 3 teams, and it's just going to be kind of like a, how in the heck did they win that kind of game with how the season has gone? But last year they still beat KU and Iowa State at home.
Yeah. And, to think about this, too, on a basketball sense, shots didn't fall today for K-State. Again, I have some questions about the looks they're actually getting from 3, but they didn't play an overwhelmingly bad basketball game today. It was low turnovers on both teams, and K-State just didn't make shots from outside, and that is a significant part of this. Now, I will say, I think a lot of the Coleman Hawkins distaste has now been transferred over to Brendan Hazen all of a sudden. K-State has to do a better job of getting Brendan Hazen looks that benefit the type of player he is. He's not ever going to create for himself. That's not who he's supposed to be or needs to be. But K-State has to find a better way to get him looks moving forward, because if you can't do that, then yes, he is not a good player to be on the floor. He's not good defensively. that happens. Not all 5 guys on the floor can be great at defense. But Brendan Hazen has a tool that can make him very valuable for a lot of teams to be on the floor, and that's his shooting. K-State, that's the next step in trying to get things kind of lined up for next season is, can we get an offense that is getting the looks for Brendan Hazen to make it necessary for him to succeed a little bit more? So that's my biggest basketball takeaway from today is the stuff along those lines, and we'll see what it means for K-State. They hit the road next to face Baylor, which, Scott Drew, Jerome Tang, that's kind of like the Bill Self Oklahoma State charity game. It's like Scott Drew can't beat Jerome Tang. Oklahoma State, for whatever reason, as terrible as they've been, they randomly get KU like every 3 years. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch how that one plays out. And I think it's going to be a close game in Waco.
Yeah, I'll say a close and high-scoring game because neither team has really played a lot of defense since the start of Big 12 play.
Yeah, well, that's true. Defense, optional with the way that Baylor has had things work out over the last couple of seasons. But that will do it for us today here from Lawrence. K-State falls 84-74. And we'll be back throughout the rest of the week. Normal week, finally, as long as I don't randomly get sick again or have other stuff going on. Normal week at KSO coming up here on the YouTube, podcasts, everything. And then everything you're accustomed to still going to be there over at On3 and KStateOnline.com. So from Allen Fieldhouse, that's Drew Galloway. I'm Mason Voth. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.